Welcome to the Infuse Your Future podcast, where we bring together people and ideas who are making the world a better place. I'm your host, Dr. C. In this podcast, you're going to hear solo episodes with various self-help topics. You're also going to hear guest speakers from all walks of life. If you're ready to experience the power of coaching, set up a complimentary 45-minute consultation with me at infuseyourfuture.com. And be sure to sign up for my mailing list for a free gift. Enjoy the show. Hey everybody, I'm excited to announce our guest today, Melanie, who is a weight loss and clutter coach. Hi Melanie, how are you today?
Hi, Carla. So good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in the world?
Well, it depends on how far back you want to go. But I do think a little bit of my history is helpful. I was a competitive gymnast growing up, training like 4 or 5 hours a day, 5, 6 days a week. And as much as I loved dancing and tumbling and swinging and all the things, the toxic scrutiny over the scale was abusive and awful. And I quit right before college. I had already gotten offers and stuff, and just was really done. I really wanted to be a normal person, whatever normal is. And I immediately gained weight. I was depressed. I didn't know who I was anymore. My identity somehow was like all connected to the gymnastics. So I gained weight in college after getting married, after having my daughters. And at almost exactly the time that I hit 30-year-old milestone, I also hit over 200 pounds, which on a gymnast's frame is a lot. And I was depressed. I didn't know who I was. I just had assumed I'm just going to be an overweight mom and wife for the rest of my life, that my weight would precede me as opposed to my job title, which at the time was regional merchandise manager. I worked for a lingerie company. And working with the models was really, really hard. But what was super hard was taking my daughter to her first gymnastics class. And it was my community. No one recognized me, which I think is a really great thing. But that was the impetus for joining a weight loss plan. I lost 65 pounds and almost immediately became a weight loss coach with a well-known company for over 20 years. And at one point, I decided that we weren't digging deeply enough into the mindset behind weight loss as opposed to focused on calories in and calories out and calories in and calories out, which just isn't enough. So I dug deep into research. I have a close friend who I worked with a little bit, who's a personal organizer. And I just remembered previous conversations about clutter affecting weight. So I did a deep dive into researching, but the relationship between weight and clutter is very strong. And so I have created a program that helps people lose weight and get healthy by removing the physical and the mental clutter in their lives. I think the mental clutter is way more insidious. And during all of this happening, I came to realize my mother's a hoarder, my father's a hoarder, not level 5, but maybe level 4. And I realized how being in their homes is it creates high levels of anxiety for me. And so I definitely understand, even for myself, that connection between the weight and clutter. So it's been a very interesting time helping people not diet, but rather really address all of the clutter that gets in the way of being able to lose weight and be healthy.
That's such an interesting way to view it. And I can definitely see that, especially the mental clutter. And I would imagine that would spread out into your environment. The more mental clutter you have, potentially,
yes,
the more physical clutter you have.
And then the other way around.
Right.
They just keep playing off of each other. I mean, all of that mental clutter, the things that we say to ourselves that just, those things are not true, but, somehow our thoughts become facts to us over time. And I'd gotten to a point in my life where I gave up, and I gave up because of all the mental clutter that I didn't address for another 25 years practically.
Right, right. So when you started your weight loss journey, did you have a lot of clutter?
I did. My kids were 1.5 and 4, and for some reason, like, you know, all the toys would make them more productive adults. And so it's just when I look at family videos, oh my gosh, why did we have so many toys? The amount of money I would have saved by that. And this is actually something I researched. I learned about how kids are play more productively and in a more meaningful way when they have less toys. And so I can't go back in time and change that for my kids, but the house clutter was also like work clutter. I have always had a job where I've worked from home predominantly. So like the piles of papers, from the work and the family documents and all the things. Yeah, there was a lot of clutter. And I think I probably hid it well. People would come over to the house and they saw kid clutter. But I don't know, maybe they would say something different, but I know like that feeling like, oh my God, I have to hurry up and clean up the house before guests come over. Yeah, then the clutter's getting in the way.
That's one reason why I like to have guests over, because I end up doing a deeper dive into the cleaning than I would if they didn't.
100%. I should have guests every single day. That would be great.
Wouldn't it? Yeah, I can definitely remember those days when the kids were little, and especially the very early years where you get them these amazing toys for Christmas and all they care about is the wrapping paper in the box. I
My
could have just
cats.
gotten a box from somebody and they would have been happy. Uh,
Exactly.
so how did you start this business where you're transforming lives by eliminating mental and physical clutter?
Well, when I left the weight loss company I worked for, I went to another weight loss company and it still wasn't like the right fit. Or the reality is, I'm sorry, there were two jobs. The first one, I was hired, and then 5 weeks after starting, 23% of the company was laid off. And so I had that moment like, oh my God, I left the one for this. And the voices in the back of my head from people for over 20 years were telling me, you should just do this for yourself, go out on your own. And I would always say, I don't have money, I don't have the time, I'm not an entrepreneur. And all of a sudden I had a lot of time. And so I started building what I have now with just basic one-on-one coaching. I knew that weight loss was my niche or forte. So I started with that while looking for other work. And I started with a startup and then realized if I'm helping them build their business, I'm not building my own. And that's when I had to like drop everything. And I did some apprentice work with my friend's organizational company while I got to know the organizational side a little bit better. And what did we learn? Well, you can't organize stuff. You've got to get rid of stuff first. So the decluttering, in some cases, leads to very easy organization, or in some cases, you declutter and realize you don't have to organize it all. I don't need to go to Container Store or any of those places and get lots of boxes and bins and dishes and stuff if I have cleared enough away. I am not a minimalist. I only promote minimalism for those that would actually find that beneficial in their life. I just feel very strongly about living a more meaningful life with less than I have now, not, getting rid of everything and living a Spartan lifestyle. And I think that's one of the things that can scare people, thinking that like an organizer wants to make them get rid of everything. Our things have energy, and if it has strong energy that we want to keep close to us, then that's something we should keep. If we look at the item and it produces anxiety or just isn't meaningful, then this is something, to let go of. And so once we realize getting rid of things often gets rid of like, feelings and emotions that are not healthy for us, that can be really helpful. But the flip side of this is that the getting rid of things can create a happier lifestyle. We're going to do lots of other really healthy things for ourselves, like a messy kitchen. I'm not like pulling out fruits and vegetables and chopping and dicing. I'm ordering in. A messy kitchen may mean that I am buying like ready-made things which tend to be higher in fat, higher in sugar, higher in sodium, and not focused on things that are really nutritious for the body. So I like to start people in the kitchen, because then we lean into healthier cooking, and then, we can tackle other places. But a messy bedroom is hard to sleep in. We don't get good sleep. Then again, not great with the eating, not great with the activity, and not doing the activity leads to poor sleep. They're all so interconnected that it's like, taking a ball of yarn and throwing it at someone and then throwing it to another person and seeing like webs out of it. I love going to work out someplace else. I live in a New York City apartment. I don't really have a lot of room to throw out a yoga mat. But that's based on living in New York as opposed to being in a home where I don't feel comfortable taking the yoga mat out because, the space is cluttered. And I feel like, when I do yoga at home, I'm distracted by things everywhere. And so that distraction is only greater. When all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I should go clean that instead of, do yoga. So that releasing of items allows us to lean into all the other healthy habits that are good for us.
Yeah, so true. Now, when people come to you, how do you promote your service? Are you promoting it primarily as a decluttering or as a weight loss?
That's a really good question, because I started with weight loss and then I moved into clutter and then I came back to somewhere in the middle. Because people came to me for weight loss for so long, the perspective was weight loss. Then you start talking about clutter and people say, well, I don't have clutter. That's when I really argue the whole internal clutter. Like, you could have like the cleanest, most beautiful, most organized home, but we've all got some kind of mental clutter, whether it comes from childhood or it comes from last week or this morning. And so, it was actually hard to market in the beginning because someone was looking for a clutter coach or they were looking for a weight loss coach, but they weren't necessarily looking for someone who does both, because this really is so new and innovative. There are some other coaches out there who have this focus, but there are millions of weight loss coaches. There are millions of clutter coaches. Maybe I exaggerate a little bit. But at the end of the day, someone who does both is a rarity. So it's in time that people start referring me out and say, hey, this lady's doing this really incredible thing where she's helping people lose weight by decluttering. So yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't know that there's a good answer for that one.
That's cool. Do you ever help people declutter who do not need to lose weight?
I have a few, but then I had one who I worked with and she said, this is amazing. I didn't have to lose weight, but I'm eating healthier. Great. Then losing weight and getting healthy, the and healthy piece is something to tackle. It's so easy to aim for what's quick and easy when we're in the kitchen. Clear counters like lead to all these other really great things.
Right. Now, on average, how much weight do people lose in your program? I mean, are people hiring you for 10-pound weight loss, 100-pound weight loss?
It is a huge variety. For some people, 10 pounds feels like 100 pounds, and can be as hard to lose as losing 100 pounds. And as someone who lost 65 pounds, I know this is not an easy journey. I will never tell anybody that it's going to be easier. I'm sorry, that it'll be easy, but I'm very happy to tell people it will be easier once we, remove that clutter. So I've helped everybody, from I need to lose a little to I need to lose a lot. But I think, we all have this, common thread between us. I want to be healthier, and healthy is not physical. Healthy is physical and mental.
So true. In fact, you've probably heard that I think it was Kaiser that did a study. I think it started as a weight loss study. And what they found was a lot of the people that were really struggling with their weight, they had a lot of unresolved childhood trauma. And that was one thing that was keeping their weight on. And I would categorize that as serious mental clutter.
Or, using weight as like a protector is a big thing that we encounter.
kind of blew
It's a
my
big
mind when I
thing.
heard that the first time.
I just had this conversation with someone yesterday. I said, you know, the weight isn't the problem. The problem, what's in here that is helping us hang on to the weight. It, for someone to say, well, I don't understand why she doesn't just eat less, because I heard that in my past. Well, I don't understand why she doesn't just exercise more. Well, one, because just exercising and eating differently are not enough, especially if the struggle with weight loss is coming from in our heads.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean like in our heads, like we're crazy. Absolutely not. But what's in our head, we're saying all these things like, well, I guess I just deserve to be this way, or I guess this is just who I'm going to be. People in my family are overweight, so of course I'm overweight. Well, yeah, that may be, I learned really negative eating habits growing up because the other people in my home were overweight. But it's not our responsibility as parents to make sure that our kids are completely healthy, because they're only home with us so many hours a day. And then they go out into the real world and discover kids aren't supposed to snack on broccoli. And that's when they discover French fries and potato chips or whatever. Better to, my real approach to this is there's no good food or bad food. Like, don't demonize the food. All food can be good depending on how we often or how much, or in combination with what, healthy option. I'm not anti-sugar and anti-grease. I'm just like, you know what, maybe we do that less often, lean into the healthy stuff so that when we do have those things, it's special and delicious as opposed to just what I eat every day.
Right. Now, how long does it usually take someone who's working with you to go through their weight loss journey on average?
So I am the first person to say there are no guarantees in time. And I'm not a quick fix. I will never be a quick fix. Quick fix usually means gaining it back plus some, and rather quickly. And which was my experience with every diet I had done before. But for me, every diet I did before, they were drastic. I needed to lose it fast because I was a bridesmaid or I was a bride, and I gained weight on my journey to being a bride, not losing weight. I was the one that showed up and they said, you told us to buy a smaller size. And then you came in a bigger size, and they had to do, it was very expensive on that dress, but it is these quick fixes. I mean, I did everything from no carbs to salad for every meal to like working out like way too much during the day and then assuming that I was going to be able to keep up that behavior. So I am the first person to say we are not looking to do this quickly because we want to do this sustainably. And we want it to keep for a lifetime. We want the weight loss journey to look like maintenance, so that when we shift to maintenance, we just continue, as opposed to I'm going to go back to all of the old behaviors I was practicing and then gain the weight back. I like to talk about ridiculously simple goals, like the smallest, simplest goal that you can set so that it's quickly accomplished. Pat yourself on the back for a great job, and then build into more complex goals. So if we're going to do it that way, we will lose consistently and consistently. I predominantly work with women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. We don't lose like we did when we were teenagers and when we were in our 20s. So knowing that even if I'm not losing, I'm practicing the behaviors, and it's the practice of the behaviors that needs to be celebrated before the weight loss. Celebrate the fact that you're doing something. One, because there are guarantees in being able to make behavior change, but there are no guarantees in terms of how long the weight takes. Like if there was a perfect equation, if I eat this and drink this much water and exercise this amount of minutes and sleep this amount of hours, I will lose X, then we would all try to do it, but it would be probably hard to maintain. So I'm a firm believer in like 20 pounds can come in 20 weeks. It can come in 20 months. Do it at the pace that is something that feels like real life as opposed to sometimes I'm on a diet and sometimes I'm not.
Right. And then there's also a healthy amount of weight loss. I mean, you don't want to lose too much too fast. It's not healthy.
No, absolutely. It does other damage too. We could be trying to lose weight to lower our cholesterol, regulate our blood sugar, get our blood pressure down, but all of those will be affected in negative ways if we're losing too quickly. You're right.
Now, of course, I have to ask you, these are the days of the Ozempic and similar medications. What's your
Mhm.
take on that? I know quite a few people that are taking it and they seem to love it. It kills their appetite. They don't want to eat. They're happy with their weight loss. Um, but then you have people saying, just wait 5 years. We're going to be dealing with all kinds of things like brittle bone disease or malnutrition. And of course, the people that I know that are on it, if they're not on it, they're gaining their weight back.
Right. So I have a lot of feelings about this. The number one feeling is that there are people who are going to need this, that hormonally there's something wrong in the body, and the GLP-1s are going to help with that. And I also want to be clear that, and if someone has a lot to lose, they may need that as a kickstart. And certainly lower doses. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but lower doses are also going to lead to more slower weight loss, more, and behaviors that are more sustainable. The medication cannot be used, in a vacuum. It needs to come with education in a healthier diet, whether this is someone who was never eating vegetables before or needs help with portion control. Those GLP-1s, when they're just given to a patient, come back and let's check your blood, in a few months, is being done a disservice. That coupled, with weight loss coaching, a personal trainer, nutrition coach, all of the above, or, just one or two of those, is incredibly beneficial to them working. And you're right, we don't know. 5 years from now, we can be hearing a lot of terrible things, but the reality is, and this may be a weird take, in 5 years, if I'm not losing weight, I'm going to have a whole lot of other health issues.
Mm.
And recognizing that I need to make a move. I need to, implement change. That may be what's necessary for some people. And
Well,
I will tell you, I speak very differently about this than I did just a few years ago. And it was because I had been touting forever, if you eat right and exercise, then you'll lose weight. It's just not true for some people. They do need to address the whole hunger thing.
right. Now, you've been doing this for a long time. If people have a lot of weight to lose, they tend to end up with extra skin. And I know I was talking to someone just recently, they had this whole weight loss plan and they're like, and as soon as I lose all this weight, I'm getting a tummy tuck. Have you noticed a difference in the slow versus the rapid weight loss? If you lose it slowly, will people still have the excess skin and will they need like tummy tucks and other plastic
In my,
surgery?
it's a good question. In my experience, the extra skin, depending on how much we have to lose, it is going to be there. I don't have a perfect body. I have a mommy belly, and, I have to come to terms with, I'm not going to look like I did when I was 17, and I wouldn't want to. I have a woman's body, and I'm totally cool with that. Yes, the slower we lose, the more elasticity there is. Exercising at the same time as losing weight will also make an impact, especially addressing those areas of the body where, there is potentially going to be extra skin. Yeah, I have worked with people who have done, what do they call it? Redundant skin surgery. But the people that I've seen do it are people who have lost 100 or more pounds. They have been people where that's hard to combat. And certainly the earlier we do it, the more elasticity the skin is going to have. But I said it before, I'm over 50. There's just no going back. And aging gracefully everything to do with, all right, so fine. So I have a little bit of a belly. There are worse things that have happened in my life.
That's so true. And you can use it to celebrate the fact that you've made it so far in life. And if you have children, this is the place that gave you the children. You know, there are so many
Yes.
positive mindset tools you can use to accept the beauty that it is.
Can I tell you a funny story about that?
Absolutely.
So my daughters are in their mid to late 20s, and I went through this journey when when I lost my weight when they were like 18 months and 4 years old. And I don't remember exactly what we were doing, but I was changing my clothes and my daughters were in the room with me. And I had already lost my weight, and maybe they were 7 and 5 or 6 and 4. And one of them pointed at my belly and said, "What are all those lines on your stomach?" And I was really confident that the best thing for my kids would be for me not to say something like, well, it's because mommy gained weight and lost weight. And out of nowhere, I said, "It's a map." And they said, "What do you mean it's a map?" And I said, "Well, this is where mommy was born in New York City. This is where mommy went to college in California. And the lines are," and then I had baby Jolie. And then the lines, we moved back to New York and I had baby Shayna, and they just were fascinated. And one of them said, "So when am I going to have a map?" In my head, I hope you never do. No, because that is, like the wrinkles around my eyes or on my forehead are all a part of that map of my life and have gotten me to the point that I am now. So why be embarrassed about those things as opposed to just like, really loving them?
I've never heard it put like that, and I love it. I'm going to have to, figure out the story of my map. That was a really cool story. So what's been your biggest challenge?
As a coach, as
Uh,
someone who lost weight, as a parent, all of the above.
Let's go with as a coach. What's been your most challenging case or case subject, so to speak?
So, as a coach, I think the hardest thing to do is to not give advice, because we want to give advice. But my role as a coach isn't in giving advice. Even when I think I know the perfect thing they need to hear, the reality is I need to ask all of the questions that will help them get the answers on their own. I will give advice if someone flat out asks, and I will always say what worked for me is, or has, or what works for me is, and really stress the words "for me," because there are those who will just always look, figuring that whatever exercise you do will be what works for them. The way you eat is how will work for them. So I think that's the hardest thing as a coach. In terms of a client, I feel like the hardest job has been the clutter side, then the weight side. And I think when I started this, I wouldn't have said that, because in my head, it would be like, let's just clean everything up, as opposed to all of the work that we have to do in and outside of our body for weight loss. But I work with someone who um, is a hoarder and also very wealthy. So there's no questions asked, can I afford this? No, let's not get it right now. All the things that I would say, that before you buy something, ask yourself, do I really need this? Will it really enhance my life? Can I afford it right now? Because finances are clutter, too. And so all these questions that I ask when I have a thing at home, do I need this? When's the last time I used it? Is it enhancing my life? If I was at a store, would I buy it again? If I moved, would I take this item with me? If the answers are very clear, like get rid of it now, then, could someone use this more than I could? All of the questions that make it helpful to get rid of things. Once we get good at asking those questions, then we get good at asking those questions when we're shopping. And this woman, she just owns too much for her space, and having the credit cards in hand doesn't stop her, from the shopping. And I know that she wants to live, she keeps calling it an adult life, like somehow being an adult means not having too much stuff. to her, but what I see is using shopping as a way to manage feelings. And I understand that. I managed all my feelings with food, before this journey. And to give her credit, when I lost my weight, I went down 7 sizes. 7 times I had to replace clothing, or at least replace some of my clothing. And I do think that I got a little addictive with it. Like the shopping was then replacing the food as how I managed my feelings. And so I think that's what I see in her. So I think sometimes, the hardest client can be the one that you connect really well with, because you really understand, where they're coming from. I mean, I'd love to have too much money. Because I think now I've learned enough that if I had too much money, I wouldn't just be filling up my space with stuff. I'd probably be.
Yeah, that's a dream of mine as well. Just travel. Now, what's
Yeah,
your biggest success as a
biggest
coach,
success.
your most successful client?
I think my most successful client is the one that verbalizes how much she's changed the way she thinks. And one of the things that she was a very black and white person. I get it, I'm so black and white, all or nothing. So every time it was time to up the ante on weight loss, it meant I'm quitting sugar, or I'm only eating salads every day. Very much the way I thought. But even all or nothing with like a healthy plan for losing weight, and watching her shift that thinking. I like to use the example of light switches and dimmers. A light switcher approach to behavior change is like, that's it. I'm never doing it again. I'm quitting smoking. I'm never picking up a cigarette again. I'm quitting drinking. I will never pick up a drink again. I'm losing weight. I will never touch sugar again. But I feel like more of life is a dimmer, and we move in the way of behavior change slower or more slowly. And while we're doing that, sometimes we'll be leaning very strongly into the new behaviors, and sometimes we fall back a little bit. But knowing that the dimmer can can become brighter or darker, I think gives us a more realistic approach to how we approach life in general. And she's one that talks about the light switch and the dimmer a lot. So I know if she's using that vocabulary, that she's really leaning into that as a success.
Very nice. I love giving people a call to action, something that they can take with them starting today, starting now, whether or not they have any money to invest. Can you give people a call to action?
Oh, absolutely. Like, just pick one. It's like, it's the rule of one shelf, one drawer, one, part of the closet. Like, let those things go. From the clutter perspective, in terms of the weight loss perspective, again, the power of one. I will replace one snack a day with a piece of fruit. I will drink one more glass of water a day. I'll take one exercise class this week. Or maybe it's not the exercise class. Maybe I just need to buy a pair of shoes that would be used for the class, because once I got the shoes, I can go. So I feel so strongly about just one small step in the direction that you want to go in.
Great advice. Now, how can people get a hold of you if they want to hire you?
Oh, that's great. Melanie Cohen .podia.com, Podia. My website talks, there's sample lessons, and they can watch a few of the previously recorded workshops. I have a weekly workshop where we have a whole bunch of people who are there to support each other, or to be around like-minded people who are trying to remove the physical and mental clutter. And I guess physical clutter is the stuff, but physical clutter is like, let's let some of the weight go too. Maybe that, is a form of clutter. So we have weekly workshops. I have written over 50 courses about weight, about clutter, about mindset, everything from decision-making fatigue and emotional eating and light switches and dimmers like we just talked about. And I also do one-on-one coaching.
That sounds great. And I'll definitely have all your information in the show notes so people can just click and find you.
Awesome.
Any last words of wisdom or subjects of interest before we sign off?
I think the one thing that I want everyone to know is exactly how much clutter we have between the years, and that letting some of that clutter go can make us feel lighter. And we all deserve to feel a little lighter in life.
Gosh, that is so true. I love the days that I declutter. I'm trying to every weekend to have at least one declutter day. And it's so easy these days. There are buy nothing groups, free cycle groups. So I don't even have to throw it away. I just post it online and there's somebody who wants it. And I think this thing is going to get used as opposed to sitting on my shelf. And
Right.
it feels so much lighter when I've gotten rid of it. And I feel so much joy.
And you make such a great point that sometimes we don't want to get rid of things because we think it's going to end up in a landfill, and a landfill is not where we want it to go. But if our daughter, sister, cousin, whoever doesn't want it, and no one picks it up on buy nothing, take it to donated. If it's something that they won't take for donating, recycle, and if it's something that can't be recycled, we might just need to put it in the trash, because it doesn't matter whether it's going in a landfill now or later, that's where it will end up.
Such great advice. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, Carla, thank you for having me. This was awesome.